How exactly have these ideas become so pervasive?
First of all, I think we need to remember that in the West, at least, we have it drilled into our minds from childhood onwards that personal happiness is the key to individual flourishing. Secondly, we think of ourselves in psychological terms. I am my feelings. And in order for me to be happy, I have to be able to express my feelings. I have to be outwardly that which I feel myself to be inwardly. Thirdly, we're taught that interfering with somebody else's happiness is very bad. We need to acknowledge that there are powerful lobby groups, powerful cultural and political lobby groups driving this thing. Hollywood is pressing LGBTQ+ matters in so many movies. We're seeing it in the way Amazon sets up its algorithms. There are all kinds of factors in society that are pushing what would really be numerically a fairly minority interest into being one of the main political focal points of this generation.
After my operation, I will be a woman.
Why can't she just be a lesbian?
Because she's not a lesbian, Mom. She's a boy.
Because I was born in a girl's body.
Can I ask you a question? Why don't you kiss me?
The whole idea of social contagion, that there could be something in one's social environment that could play some role in somebody coming out identifying as trans, would you say that that is definitely part of your story?
When I look back, I don't think I would have ever even considered seeing myself as a boy without these social aspects, especially if I hadn't joined these online communities.
I identify as non-binary. I'll officially be changing my pronouns to they, them.
My pronouns are he, him, and demon, demon self.
I've been going by they, them pronouns for 4 years now. I'm pretty comfortable with it.
I use they, them pronouns.
There was literally a period of a few weeks to a few months. I started out as an ally, and then eventually I was starting to identify as transgender.
We are trans models.
So they go on the internet and they're told that all of their problems will be solved if they become a man.
Kids are being taught, you might feel like you're a boy, even if you have a vagina and you're a girl, you are what you feel you are.
Some people are girls, some are boys, some are both, some are neither. Gender is all about how we feel on the inside and how we express ourselves.
Ah, the gender fluid teacher. What do I go by in the classroom? I go by Teacher Fambrini.
As a queer and trans teacher, my agenda is to show little boys that they don't have to be like as stereotypically masculine, that they can like paint their nails and wear earrings and like still be a guy and like it can be cool.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
Looking back on it, it was the same pattern, just kids who were really struggling, kids who were very alone and isolated.
They have anxiety. They don't fit in with their peers. They don't know where they belong.
Maybe they didn't have a welcoming family life. They just got caught up in these communities online.
Then they discover, hey, there's this group of people, and they also don't fit in. They're different. They're not sure who they are. Gee, that's where I fit in.
Today is the day before my top surgery. I am waking up tomorrow at 5 a.m. to have a subcutaneous mastectomy.
We're telling children when they haven't fully developed that all you have to do is medically transition and you fit in. I was one of those kids. It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
Trans rights. This is only going in one direction. You will respect us.
As parents come to understand more about gender identity, kids are coming out at younger ages.
It's exciting. And you know who gets it right? Is this next generation.
The next generation who's already telling us that our antiquated ideas of things have to be a certain way just don't apply to them.
They're rejecting a lot of our social mores. They're tweaking the system.
I just don't think it's realistic to put this decision on them that is basically saying, are you okay with the risk of permanent health effects that you can never, ever reverse? How can you ask that of such a small child?
I'm a physician and I use medication.
Certainly, it's a bit of a Faustian bargain.
Puberty blockers, which are completely reversible.
You keep invoking the word truth,
which is condescending and rude.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
Does a chicken cry? Does a chicken commit suicide?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
I guess because I got a dick.
Somehow this madness has infected our entire society. Am I the crazy one? I'm done asking questions.
Tanner Cross is on administrative leave for what he said about gender identity. He said he would not call a student who's transgender by their preferred pronoun.
I can't lie to children, and I gotta also represent a whole community that believes in biological facts and scientific facts. And I can't do that to kids.
You get into teaching because you love kids. This policy started coming into play and I was like, wait a minute, it's causing me, I'm gonna have to lie to my kids, the ones I've always wanted to protect.
Do we have assaults in our bathrooms or our locker rooms regularly?
To my knowledge, we don't have any records of assaults occurring in our restroom. The predator transgender student or person, simply, it does not exist.
The Virginia Department of Education says it is now reviewing whether the Loudoun County School District has properly reported cases of sexual assault. This comes after a 15-year-old was charged on 2 separate occasions for assaulting 2 different students at different schools.
Dozens rallying tonight in Loudoun County to protest the school's policies.
So that includes limiting who can talk during public comment portions of board meetings. One speaker leased property in the area just so he could speak tonight. Fox 5's Paris Jones is live with the details.
That's right. Conservative commentator Mat Ghuόλs told me he's leasing out someone's basement in Loudoun County so he'd be able to speak during tonight's meeting.
I decided last week to fulfill my lifelong dream of being a Loudoun County resident. You know, I've always felt like I lived in Tennessee. I felt sort of like a Virginian trapped in a Tennessean's body. I identify as sort of state fluid, I guess.
This is Mat Ghuόλs. He tweeted, "How do you do, fellow Virginians?"
Now I just got to explain to my wife and kids that we're going to be staying in someone's basement. They tried to muzzle me by not allowing me to speak. And when that didn't work, they tried to muzzle me with a mask. I would thank you all for allowing me to speak to you tonight, but you tried not to allow it, yet here I am. Now, you only give us 60 seconds, so let me get to the point. You are all child abusers. You prey upon impressionable children and indoctrinate them into your insane ideological cult, a cult which holds many fanatical views, but none so deranged as the idea that boys are girls and girls are boys. By imposing this vile nonsense on students to the point even of forcing young girls to share locker rooms with boys, you deprive these kids of safety and privacy and something more fundamental too, which is truth. If education is not grounded in truth, then it is worthless. Worse, it is poison. You are poison. You are predators. I can see why you try to stop us from speaking. You know that your ideas are indefensible. You silence the opposing side because you have no argument. You can only hide under your beds like pathetic little gutless cowards hoping we shut up and go away, but we won't. I promise you that. Johnny's a boy with a big imagination. One day he's a dog, the next day a crustacean. Johnny's mom loves her son's make-believe time. You're Johnny the Walrus till you change your mind.
Mat Walsh is out with a new children's book. The book is called Johnny the Walrus. What is this about?
It sold out on Amazon in a few hours.
So I have embraced my true calling as a children's author, hence the cardigan. The book is about a little boy who's very imaginative and playful, and like I have 4 kids and they all have an imagination.
Yeah.
And he likes to pretend to be different things, and one day he pretends to be a walrus. And unfortunately, his mother is is very progressive and thus confused. And so she's convinced by the internet and by society that if your child is identifying as something, then he really is that thing. And so she tries to raise her child as a walrus, as a sort of trans walrus, respecting his self-identity. One morning, he came downstairs barking and clapping, wood spoons for tusks and sock fins a-flapping. He had spoons in his mouth. He was pretending to be a walrus. I'm Johnny the Walrus, he said with a roar.
Johnny the Walrus,
This is a hot topic.
Yes.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good for us to have these conversations so people open their minds and relearn and unlearn to what we've been taught.
So I want this to be a safe place to talk about and learn.
As you can see, there's an ongoing evolution of language and how people can identify.
My next guest, author and conservative host of Daily Wire's The Mat Ghuόλs Show, talking about his recently published children's book that has since been removed online by a popular large retail chain. Now, Matt says gender is not a social construct, but rooted firmly in biology. True?
True. As human beings, we have a sex, male or female. But as a biological scientific fact. Now, gender is a linguistic term. Words have gender. People don't. You can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. You know, it's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and no matter whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify.
So you think it's a delusion?
Well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. It's like, what is a woman?
Well,
can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't.
Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people who...
That describes what?
People who identify as a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Okay. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
So
you want to reduce
problem.
Women, you want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals, our chromosomes, right? That's what you're saying.
You want to do is
that's
what you want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood and turn it into basically a costume that could be worn.
Joining us on stage is Dr. Susie Denbo, Associate Professor at Kent State University. Dr. Denbo, how do you feel those who oppose using pronouns are taking the wrong approach in this conversation?
There's the extreme approach that you are admittedly taking. And then there's also just ordinary people that might not be comfortable with the language change.
She began by saying that my view is extreme. Okay, so the view that every single person on Earth has held up until 15 seconds ago is extreme. They are conflating gender and sex because on one hand they say, well, you got your biological sex, but then your gender is whatever social construct. But then they turn around and say that trans women are women. So a man who identifies with the gender, the social construct of womanhood, actually is a woman.
Part of me wants to ask why you care so much, because it's really not that big of a deal.
Can I answer that? I care about the truth. So basic truth matters. I want to live in a society where people care about the truth. I care about children, and these insane ideas about gender are being foisted on kids, and that bothers me quite a bit. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them. I care quite a bit, yeah.
I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this, and it seems like we should just keep the dialogue going and hopefully find some middle ground.
What do you say to parents? A parent comes to you and says, my 8-year-old son is telling me he's a girl.
Yeah, great. You're gonna have him do an experimental procedure that creates the most suicidal ideation of any other population 7 to 10 years after, transition. And here's what I tell parents. You don't have the right to medically transition your child.
We have no research on long-term hormone use. We will be seeing the first generation of long-term hormone use. And we already know, at least with 10 years of hormones, you're giving yourself cancer.
What's your message to parents who are trying to cope with this?
The first thing is to tell parents that they're not alone. It is our responsibility as a parent to be the frontline defense for our children. And I know with my child, a lot of people will say, was it worth it? Because you now seemingly have lost your child. And I'll say, yeah, but at least I've saved my conscience and my morals and my convictions. And when my child turns 25 and says, Dad, where were you? I'll say, I was there. I was fighting as hard as I could. I was not prepared to let this happen.
Does this really matter is another question. So,
matters for those who are getting double mastectomies when they're 16.
Why should we care if we live in a society where gender is fluid?
Well, I cared because my government decided that I had to call people by the terms that they designated, or I'd be subject to legal penalties. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care what your reason is. You don't get control of my tongue.
We live in a climate now in which no one seems to care about the safety of women and girls who are going through a very developmentally challenging time in their lives. They may not want to share spaces with their male peers. I would not be surprised in a few years, there will no longer be women's sports. It will literally be men's sports and transgender sports.
The question being asked by the trans person is a legitimate one. How can I be happy? The answer being given by having my body transformed to look like the other gender, by having myself pumped full of hormones, clearly isn't working. And we have to find a better and the more humane way of dealing with individuals who are struggling with gender dysphoria.
I have the utmost compassion for people who suffer from gender dysphoria. It's a nightmare for them and their families. The vast majority, up to 90% of kids, if they go through a normal puberty, they're gonna be okay. They will be at peace with their bodies, and they will have avoided dangerous and experimental medical interventions and surgeries.
Maybe we're up against a battle here, up against a hill that perhaps, we're not gonna necessarily win today, but if we don't pave the way for a win, we'll never get there.
So we're going on this journey. Boys can be girls, girls can be boys, men can be women, women can be men. It makes me wonder, what is a woman?
What is a woman? A woman is someone who claims that as their identity. It could be many things to many people.
I think the question really brings up the fact that it is pretty relative, right? That if you ask women across race, across identities, across class, across culture, you will get a different answer.
Some of it is, based on biology. Some of it is based on hormones. Some of it is based on what you wear and how you present yourself.
A woman is not anything in particular. There's no one particular thing.
There is not one particular thing.
A woman is someone who says that she is a woman and transitions to be a woman.
Who says that she's what? Can you define the word woman without using the word woman?
It's actually kind of it's a curious question, but
We've been journeying across the country asking people this question, and almost nobody can answer it.
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
Marry one and find out.
So I should go home and ask my wife, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been meaning to ask you something.
Uh-huh.
What is a woman?
An adult human female who needs help opening this.
provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a
The
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about. Just last week, an entire generation of young girls watched as our taxpayer-funded institutions permitted a biological man to compete and beat a biological woman in the NCAA swimming championships. What message do you think this sends to girls who aspire to compete and win in sports at the highest levels?
Senator, I'm not sure what message that sends. If you're asking me about the legal issues related to it, those are topics that are being hotly discussed, as you say, and could come to the court.